Hey world, Dan Brown here, ready to take care of just a little bit of housekeeping. So I've been back in the serious POGOBAT game for a little bit over a month now, and it feels really good. It feels really good to be expressing myself, to be doing my due diligence to try to save the world from climate catastrophe, living my best life, living the sort of life that I want to live. And the content the whole time I've been back, really, after I got a lot of the initial stuff off my chest that I just needed to say about the situation young people my age, the whole world really finds itself in right now. After I got the big stuff off my chest, I have been in a little bit of a holding pattern as a leftist political content creator, because we're waiting for the midterm election results next Tuesday. It's going to inform a whole heck of a lot about just like where the left stands generally and what sort of content and organization might need to happen in the aftermath. So I figured that right now would be a pretty good time to take care of some more nuts and bolts, like meta conversation about POGOBAT, housekeeping items like changes in my life and how that has affected my ability to make POGOBAT. That will bleed into a conversation about upload schedule, how many videos I'm going to be making, what exactly the content's going to be about, and finally I want to talk today about big picture conversation. Like, what are the guiding principles, the values of POGOBAT going into the end of 2018, 2019, and beyond? So let's go ahead and delve in. Oh wait, first of all, this is obligate. I can't not do this. I sound like a broken record, but this is the most important election of our lifetimes. We're 4 days away from it. I can't not remind you just one more time. You got to go out and vote. If you don't know where your polling place is, if you don't know what time of day you're going to vote, if you don't have a plan for exactly how you're going to vote, if you don't know what your ballot will look like when you show up, you can fix all of that by going to votesaveamerica.com. There's a link in the description. Seriously, you can look at your ballot. You can know what the bubbles are going to look like, or what you're going to have to punch through, or what sort of electronic voting screen that's going to try to trick you into clicking on the Republican name in certain states is going to look like, so you can be prepared for all that sort of stuff. Anyway, okay, just go to votesaveamerica.com. Get that figured out. If you haven't already early voted, everyone has to do it. Okay, vote. Anyway. The last time I told you anything about my life, my work life, it was probably that I had moved from New York City to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to do operations work for X-Pogo, the X-Pogo stunt team, like booking flights and hotel rooms and putting together itineraries for professional pogo stick athletes as they go to do gigs like NBA halftime shows and state fairs and minor league baseball games, etc., etc. I have recently moved away from the full-time operations work of that job to pursue more of a life, of the sort that I want to, to enable myself, frankly, to be able to make content again. I'm on good terms with X-Pogo. I'm still emceeing gigs for them here and there, but the full-time operations position, I'm no longer doing that. Instead, I'm fulfilling my destiny as a millennial living into an existence in the gig economy. I'm not making a ton of money. I'm selling magic cards on TCG Player. I've started a TaskRabbit account, thinking about Ubering and Lyfting, although I don't know if I want to take that plunge unless I really have to. I mean, YouTube is a revenue stream. It's a trickle for me. My backlog of content does make a little bit every month, and as I build out a newly remodeled, the newest, latest iteration of POGOBAT, I hope to turn this into more of a revenue stream also. But I'm basically trying to subsist in service of making content on the internet. I would rather be poor and free than secure but working some desk job somewhere. As I have had not a midlife crisis, but a pre-mid, late. It's not a crisis. I'm not having a crisis. I've just been figuring out what I want to do. My main goal in life is to do everything in my power to make the world a better place. That's the first filter. That's kind of what you learn in kindergarten that you're supposed to do. And what that means on the ground level, as I've grown into life as an adult, I realize that we face incredible peril. We face existential threats. I want to stop climate change. Do everything in my power to do that. And I see video blogging, content creation, given my background, given my skill set, this is the most efficient vector towards moving the needle on that particular issue, right? In the short term, just know my life is a bit of a hodgepodge of gig economy gigs, and it's going to be evolving a little bit. I'm experimenting. I don't know how many pieces of IKEA furniture I want to assemble through TaskRabbit every week. I don't know quite what the number of sales is going to be every week of collectibles on TCG Player. Yeah, I'm feeling it out. It's going to be evolving, but just know it is all in service of doing this. This is my priority again, for the first time in a long time, and it feels really good. I did have to step away from making videos for a few years, half a decade, I don't even know, because, I had to get my bearings on this platform and just in life as an adult. As a teenager, I was kind of famous on YouTube, and that was incredible. It was an incredible privilege to have that experience. But when thousands and thousands of people know you in the way that you represented yourself as a teenager, it can create just it requires a little bit of time to figure out how to recalibrate and then represent yourself as an adult. The fur flies a little fast when you're a kid and you're excited, and I don't always feel like I've represented myself entirely accurately, and I feel like I'm doing a better job now than I ever have before, but it took a lot of time away from it. Now coming back to it, I have a fresh perspective, and this is the place where I feel like I can have the biggest impact. So yeah, spent a month here getting my feet wet, making new POGOBAT content. I've also made gaming content. So the way that I've been doing it up to this point is one video a week on POGOBAT and one video a week on POGOBAT gaming about Magic the Gathering, about Elder Dragon Highlander is the format that I love more than any other game. But, a little over a month in, I'm adjusting the knobs, adjusting the broth just a little bit, and I am going to stop making regular content on my gaming channel in service of making twice as much content right here on POGOBAT. You might have noticed this is my second video on my main POGOBAT channel this week. I hope to continue at that pace at least through the end of 2018 and ramp up further into 2019 and beyond. So just know I will still be making sporadic Magic the Gathering related content, but I think that this is it's best not to split my focus between two. It's the same format, on my Magic content. If you've ever seen it, I'm sitting here, I'm wearing a witch's hat, but it's the same sort of setup with a condenser microphone and my computer screen right here and talking about Magic cards. But the ideology that goes into it, the mental work that goes in, is kind of different, and it has split my focus, and I think that I can make more total progress if I just go all in here on POGOBAT. So that's the plan right now. Every week, I'm going to come out with a new POGOBAT. The first one will be on Tuesday, Wednesday-ish, giving myself a little bit of wiggle room. And then the second POGOBAT every week will be on Friday, Saturday-ish. I don't want to paint myself in too specific of a corner just yet. Like I said earlier, I am building out a rapidly evolving hodgepodge of gig economy gigs. So, as I figure out this workflow, as I figure out what my average week kind of looks like, we might refine that further and get a little bit more specific about how content will be released. But for right now, also know that not today, but soon I will be relaunching a Patreon account. There will never be a paywall. You will never have to pay anything to watch POGOBAT content, but I will start passing the hat around, proverbially, pretty soon. As soon as I find the time to put in that effort, make that account again. And, I want to establish a little bit more trust here before I start just shilling for money by releasing content regularly and decidedly, and communicating to you right now. Taking care of this housekeeping is an important step before I just start asking you for money randomly. But just know, bugging your ear, that's coming up. The format of POGOBAT is going to stay similar to what it is here. It's just going to be Dan and the Bats hanging out, reminding ourselves with regularity how serious our situation is, of our shared existential peril from the cascading crises of climate change, right? I've been in this pre-midterm election holding pattern that I was talking about, earlier. Basically, the whole time I've been making POGOBATs again, and I recognize that my content has struck a consistently alarmist tone over the last month. That's not going to change per se after the midterms. I think that we need to be alarmed. I think the mainstream media does a piss poor job of reminding us of how serious the situation we face is, and I want to do my part to fill in that gap. But in addition to spreading alarmism, spreading alarm, I also, after the midterms, once we know a little more how we stand, want to push this content in more of a conversational direction, maybe more of a political organizey sort of direction. I want to do all of that in conjunction with each other element. So also, going into 2019, I want to expand POGOBAT's content creation, the POGOBAT content universe. Don't have any announcement to make right now, but just know that the avenues, the mediums that I think are most ripe for exploration would be podcasting and streaming. So if you have any experience with any of that, either as a viewer or as a producer, I read the comments. The comments are very influential to just how I see these things. So if you have thoughts, if you have feedback, if you have input on that, or just like the gig economy generally, I'm pretty new to all this. So if you're like driving for Lyft or working for TaskRabbit or know of some platform that I've never even heard of that might be a useful way to contribute to the hodgepodge of subsistence income that I have in service of making videos, leave a comment about any of that. I want all that, any and all that. Podcasting, streaming, gig economy, any of your experience, want that to enrich my knowledge before I jump in all the way. So a long, long time ago, in a POGOBAT galaxy far, far away, me and my viewers, had a conversation about what our community values were. Okay, values from a content creator obviously can be intuited over time. It's in the blank space. If you watch enough of a given creator's content, you start to figure out like what their basic worldview is. But I think that actively articulating our shared values accelerates the process of, a random assortment of viewers turning into something that resembles a little more of a community. So I want to do that again as part of this POGOBAT reset moment. Because no matter what form my content creation takes exactly, it's useful for you to know like the 10,000-foot guiding principles, like where my head is at. These are the ideas that, at least for now, are guiding everything that I do, whether it's podcasting or streaming or publishing these videos. Like these are the ideas. And I want to say for a second, the earlier conversation we had as part of the Pogo tribe, I think, was rooted in a lot of like late 2000s, early 2010s optimism about the effect that the internet and connectivity would have on our society. And that has given way, especially since the 2016 election, to a lot of pessimism. I mean, we called ourselves the Pogo tribe, but nowadays tribalism, the tendency for our information landscape to divide us into tribes, is seen as more of a negative. So like we are a community, but I want to also be clear, like I'm also just an individual, and in many ways this is just like my personal soapbox. If you want to engage with the community that kind of exists in the periphery of my content here, it might be useful for you to, I don't know, start your own YouTube channel. Like assume agency wherever you can have it as an individual, and engage with this in parallel. Like this is not a self-contained universe is kind of the point that I'm trying to make here. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, the first value that I have decided, the first guiding principle maybe I should call it, is it's the climate, stupid. You've probably picked up on this so far in my content, but this is a reference to James Carville during Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential campaign. He famously quipped, "It's the economy, stupid," meaning that every chance that they had, every issue that came up, they should frame it in terms of the economy, because that tended to benefit Bill Clinton as opposed to George H.W. Bush. Voters generally tended to think that Bill Clinton would better handle the economy than George H.W. Bush, right? The first POGOBAT core value is that the climate crisis is the same sort of catch-all issue for our generation, okay? Other issues are important, but of the thousands of different potential paths that we could take into a dystopian nightmare future in the short term or midterm, the long term, the end game for most of those nightmare scenarios is cascading crises of climate change being what ultimately threatens our lives. Okay, so it's the climate, stupid. Everything that there is to talk about, we should try to bring it back and relate it to the much broader, larger climate crisis. That's value guiding principle number 1. Guiding principle number 2, be alarmed. Okay? I mean, it's okay to be scared. We should be scared about this. The climate crisis moves in slow motion on the time scale of like decades, even centuries in some ways, which makes it all but invisible given our whiz-bang, 24-hour, 12-hour news cycle, Twitter exploded media landscape, okay? Something that moves that slow is basically just, we forget about it with regularity. Like, we should not panic. Panic is not a useful emotion, but I do think that the left needs to learn to better wield fear as a tool. I don't mean like lying about things. I don't mean trying to scare people for its own sake, just to like whip them up into a frenzy so that they show up and vote. But like we have perfectly legitimate fears here. We're not lying to people. We're not making stuff up. Like the shared existential threat of the effect of the cascading crises of climate change is something that we should be up in arms about, right? If you scare someone who isn't already scared about climate change, you are doing them a service. I believe that. And that is value number 2. Okay, value number 3, guiding principle number 3 is repeat yourself, repeat yourself, repeat yourself. As a younger content creator, I sometimes grew a little bit paralyzed by this sense that I wasn't being original enough. I was repeating myself too much in videos. I wasn't saying that much that was that new. But these days, I have a different outlook on that. I realize that repetition is important. Okay, ideas don't always stick with people the first time you say them. Not everyone watches every piece of content that I push out. And even if you do, like I said, we're in a whiz-bang media, 12-hour news cycle sort of landscape. Things fall out of mind. You forget things pretty quickly. Stories that seemed like the biggest deal in the world a month ago are gone now. Who's talking about Brett Kavanaugh right now? Nobody, really. Like, the biggest problem with climate awareness is that without constant repetition, we slide back into our daily routines. We lose sight of the big picture. So all content that I create here, it's a goal to make it fresh as heck. But I'm also going to be repeating myself pretty regularly. I'm going to come back to the same points over and over and over again. Like if you have a dozen or so regular sticking points, kind of threads that often come up in your content. I mean, that's been my experience of content creation. Even if you're saying the same 12 or so things over and over, if you pick like A and B, cross-reference those with each other, and then in a different video you pick B and F, like every time you cross-reference one of those threads with a different distinct thread, it enriches your understanding and the audience's understanding of all of the issues involved. So your repetition is not that bad of a thing. Repeat yourself, repeat yourself, repeat yourself. Value number 4, guiding principle. They're guiding principles, not values. Subtle distinction. I digress. Act while learning and learn while acting. Okay, I know what I know. You know what you know. And we should not hold back when speaking important truths. At the same time, awareness of the corruption in a system, the unsustainable nature of a way of life, it does not come in a pill. Okay, there's no such thing as being red-pilled. There is such thing as having been racist for a long time and just deciding in a moment that you're going to go ahead and be vocal about it all of a sudden. That's what red pilling really means. But brown pill, Dan Brown pill. The Dan Brown pill is not one pill. It is a regimen. It is a process. And in fact, it's a lifelong process. The best you can ever do is understand that you must constantly wrestle with your ignorance, with your privilege, to understand other people's experience of injustice in the system. Like an example of this, what I mean by this is in the comments over the last month, some viewers have pressed me on exactly what variety, what flavor of socialist I consider myself. And the honest answer is I don't quite know yet. All that I know is that this is a critically important time for the left in the United States and around the world. And, whether I ultimately decide that maybe capitalism can be saved if we just make some big tweaks, or maybe I think capitalism can't be and we need an entirely new system. Maybe I like Elizabeth Warren's brand of leftism. Maybe I like Bernie Sanders' brand a little bit more. Maybe I'm an incrementalist, or maybe incrementalism's not enough and we need like dramatic revolutionary change. I don't know where ultimately I'm going to land on all that. Like, I know what I know. And I'm already acting. I'm already communicating the sense of urgency I'm feeling about the climate crisis. But at the same time, I know that I need to continue learning while acting. I'm not some infinite bastion of knowledge. I don't have it all figured out. This is a dynamic process that we're engaged in. And so if you don't feel like you have all the answers, don't let that paralyze you. Understand what you do know, act on that, and engage with like-minded people to kind of hone in the rest. And so, once we get out of this holding pattern, once we know where we stand after these midterms, a lot of those questions I just brought up about, the exact leftward orientation that we have, or that I have, that's going to be the subject of a lot of POGOBAT's content moving forward. Act while learning, learn while acting. And finally, the final guiding principle for right now is we need to win back lost sheep. We don't need most Trumpers. We certainly don't need all of them, and we don't want any overt racism or people who would apologize for our slide into fascism or think that that's okay or something. But we also need to understand that not all Trump voters are cut from exactly the same cloth. And we don't have to agree with any of them on economic policy or any particular social issue, but on the climate issue, we need a big coalition. We need buy-in from all over the political spectrum. And without that, also, it bears repeating that there's no path to 270 electoral votes. There's no way to beat Trump in 2020 if we don't win in places like my home state of Pennsylvania or Ohio or Michigan or Wisconsin. There's some pundits on the left who have argued that, we shouldn't even try to engage with Trump supporters at all, right? America is diversifying demographically very quickly, and so it's more important to just organize our base, make sure that our base turns out and we can ignore them. But it might be true for Congress. It's not true for the Senate, and it's not true for the presidency, because America's diversification, at least, it's not happening spread out exactly evenly geographically in the United States. Okay, it's heavily concentrated, disproportionately concentrated in already liberal bastions like, California and New York, and the demographics of places like the states I mentioned, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, they're still just about as white and male as they've ever been. And if we don't improve on Hillary Clinton's performance with those groups, there is no way to beat Trump in 2020. So we have to win back some lost sheep, right? I don't expect the center right to start flocking to POGOBAT content. I don't want that. This is supposed to be a safe space for leftist discourse. But part of that discourse is strategizing about how we might frame our ideas. We're not going to sacrifice any of our ideals in service of winning back lost sheep. But all else being equal, how do we frame our ideas, our arguments, in ways that don't immediately alienate people, just because they made a terrible mistake in 2016? And that's something that I struggle with. We are all righteously angry at Trump voters, but how do we push past that? How do we begin extending a hand rather than only exclusively extending a fist? When it comes to Nazis and stuff, yeah, extend it. You punch them in the face. But when it comes to the more moderate variety of Trump supporters, we need to win them back, and we can't just make them feel like they're not welcome forever and for always. So these aren't set in stone forever and for all time, but these pretty well sum up why, how, and what I am doing on YouTube right now. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you make of these guiding principles. If you think I left anything out, or if you think any of those maybe aren't as necessary as I think that they are. I do read these comments, and I take them to heart. The next POGOBAT is going to come out on the Wednesday-ish side of the Tuesday-ish, Wednesday-ish spectrum next week, because we have a very important election on Tuesday, and I want to integrate the results of that into whatever sort of commentary, whatever sort of thoughts I wind up sharing. So it's going to be maybe even Wednesday, Thursday-ish next week. Ironic that the first video I published after announcing somewhat of a schedule might not conform to that schedule, but I digress. The election is important, and it's worth that. Speaking of important elections, I have a little bit of bonus content coming up right now. Not nearly as important as the election next Tuesday, but some would argue it has universal implications. Here we go.
Welcome to Dan Brown's Universe.
Hey world, Dan Brown with some bonus content before you get your civic duty on and go vote next Tuesday. We have a little bit of an election of our own that I promised we were going to do.
Finnegan, Alia, Furco, Polak, Kevin,
Samuel Squidley, Derek Dobus, Ruffles McFlufferson, Aaron McHale, Dakota, the abstract concept of time's passage, Jacob, Michael Brookhart, Daniel, Terry the Towel, and No Name, all ready and waiting for a piece of kibble to be put underneath. There she is, hey buddy! As was clearly laid out in the application to run for president of Dan Brown's Universe, only the dog votes. My cat does not vote as much as she wants to. Can you go in your crate? Please go in your crate for just a minute. Yeah, it's pretty fun, isn't it? Okay, good girl. Good girl. You just have to be in there for a minute. Okay, oh, hi, Rosa. I'm gonna put little pieces of treats underneath all of the pictures I already showed you, and then let Roswell out of her crate, and she will vote. Rosa, my cat, is very curious as to what all this is about. I'm gonna put a piece of treat under each of these, and then I'm gonna let Roswell out of her crate, and whichever piece of treat she eats first, the corresponding person is going to be the president of Dan Brown's Universe. Oh, also, I am recusing myself from this election. I have decided that I'm dropping my political ambitions, as explained in my Nanette video that includes Dan Brown's Universe. So this is entirely for y'all. One of the viewers, one of these 16 fine folks, 17, 16, something like that, is going to be the president of Dan Brown's Universe. There's one. All right, Roswell, you ready to vote? Are you ready to vote, baby? Let's go, buddy. Vote, 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 vote. Vote, 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 vote. Vote. You see these treats? Go get one. Yeah, no. Stop. Go get one. I don't have them. They're all on the ground. You have to choose your own. I know there are too many treats to choose from. Yeah. Maybe I'm the write-in candidate for Dan Brown's Universe president for life. Baby, you got to choose someone. Oh, 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 no, no. Did she take one? She did not. She did not take one. She is so uncertain. She doesn't want to break any rules. Oh, oh my goodness! Oh, she almost voted for Dakota. And then it was my fault. I scared her. Come here, buddy. I know, buddy. It's tough. Go get that toy. Go get that toy. This is so weird. I've never done anything like this. Hi, baby. This is like the 5th time she's voted for me. Why can't Dan just be the president of Dan Brown's Universe? Any one of those. Anyone. Anyone. Look at those streets. The winner is Aaron McHale. Aaron McHale is the president of Dan Brown's Universe. My dog has chosen. Yeah, well, you think you a good dog? Are you a good dog? Yes. You exercised your civic duty. And Rosa wants to be a part of the fun too. Hi, Rosa. Hey, baby.